Welcome to the Good Life Fire Restoration presentation, or webinar, I should say. My name is Charles Landman. I am the president of Good Life Fire Restoration. And just a little bit about this webinar today. It's going to be probably about 30 to 45 minutes, depending upon the level of questions that we have. Thank you very much for attending. Appreciate you getting through us the technical difficulties there. So, just a little bit of housekeeping items. So you may have questions for the webinar. I would encourage you to click the Q&A portion in the Zoom presentation. And if you want it for just the panelists, click panelists. Now, if you're uncomfortable with submitting questions in a public forum, we have the ability to go through a one-on-one consultation, and we can do that two ways. After the webinar, you could simply call us at 916-970-3535, and we've got Good Life people standing by to answer the questions. Or during the webinar, we can call you if you just put your phone number, and I encourage you to keep that confidential. So click Q&A and just for the panelists only, and we'll have some people pick up that phone number, and we could give you a call. So, and lastly, if you're uncomfortable with a phone call, you can simply schedule an appointment on our webpage at goodlife-construction.com/webinar-1-on-1/. And lastly, as far as the housekeeping items, we will have a review of this webinar to send out to you. For those who signed up, we'll send it via email, and we'll also have it on our website, and I'll provide you folks with the URL at the end. So, and the last thing, we aren't going to go into very significant detail on answering some of these questions in the webinar, so I encourage you to give us a call on a one-on-one consultation, because it's just going to be difficult to address every situation, as each individual's needs are just a little bit different. The main three portions of this agenda are going to center around insurance, contents, and the rebuilding process. We're going to talk a little bit about Good Life, and we're also, I think we have a feel for where currently most of you are on the Northern California fires. And then we'll finish with a little bit of final questions and some next steps. A little bit about Good Life Fire Restoration. We've been around for a little over 10 years. We've done actually close to 16,000 projects, and we have 61 employees and growing. While that shows our stability, it doesn't really show our value. Our value is really in our 100 years of experience in fire restoration. And what value does that really bring? Well, we understand your loss, and we tackle that with a sense of compassion and empathy. And then we also, given our experience, we have a guarantee on our quality rebuild. And lastly, we have a proven process that keeps you in the loop while maintaining and meeting your timelines. So, and also too, we've partnered with a team of experts that could also help you navigating the insurance process, because that can be difficult. So, why don't I introduce you to the panelists that we have today? I have already introduced myself as the moderator, Charles Landman. We have sitting right to my right, Shelley Gregory. She's a public adjuster, and I want to make sure that you guys understand she is an independent contractor, and she is not a Good Life Fire Restoration employee. Sitting to her right, or it might be your left on the screen, I'm not sure. That's Alina, and she's our Director of Administration, and she has actually been in the insurance industry, or handling the fire restoration, for 9 years, and she handles all the financial components of that. And I'm going to take a quick second and go back. I didn't do Shelley any justice. Shelley has been in the insurance industry for about 35 years. Unique to her situation is that she was also on the insurance side as an adjuster, helping out. Now, for the last 7 years, she's become a public adjuster, and she understands both sides of it. Valuable asset. And third, who you don't see in this picture, who will be tackling the contents portion, is Mike Oliveri, and he's been in fire restoration for about 15 years. We have also our Director of Operations, Bill Karp. Bill controls the entire rebuild process, all of our project managers, and phenomenal asset. And then last but not least, we have Will Stannard, and he tops out the list. He's been around for 30 years handling fire restoration. He's got a special niche because he's an estimator, and the estimator goes through every detail of your scope of work, works with your insurance adjuster, and it's certainly a specialized trait, and Bill's 30 years certainly lends a lot of experience to it. So, Your current situation, most of you have probably experienced a complete loss. You're at the environmental testing stage. So there's a number of different ways that you deal with the environmental testing. It could be the air and material contaminants that you've had to work with. It could be the surface contaminants that you've worked with, or maybe even soil and water. Regardless, you may have had all, you may have had some, but most of you have probably gone through the environmental testing process. As well as debris removal. Debris removal is the responsibility of the homeowner, but many times your insurance company has a provision in the contract to cover those particular expenses. And lastly, you're probably working with your insurance company on defining what your limits are. So that's what we believe to be your current situation. If you were here in the audience, I'd ask you if it was. So let's move on to the first large segment of this webinar, and it's insurance funds flow. And if I could give some advice, give your insurance carrier a chance to do the right thing, but please understand you have rights as an individual to maximize your claim. And if you feel that those rights are being infringed upon or your insurance adjuster isn't helping you, get help. So if you have any specific questions now as we go to the next slide, please submit your questions through the webinar and we can answer those as they come up. But how do you get help? Well, that's a great question. I'm going to transition this part of the presentation over to Shelley, and we felt that the high-level questions that we engage in or that we receive a lot of in our numerous transactions in this industry are the following three. So Shelley, if I asked you the question, do I have enough money to rebuild my home? As a public adjuster, how would you address that?
Well, I believe we would have to look at the situation. Each policy is different. We would need to review your policy, your declaration page, look for as many coverages in the policy that's available to you, and at that time we can assess if you have enough money to rebuild your home.
Question off the cuff, what percentage of people have enough coverage?
It depends on what insurance company they're insured with, and it depends on what the area of the fires are. If you've had a policy for over 10 years, know that your policy goes up 10% a year for the cost of inflation to rebuild.
You know.
And if it's a new policy, the agent should have reviewed the cost per square foot to rebuild your home. And at that point, we would tell you if you have enough to rebuild or not. Or you want to ask your agent why you have such a shortage on the rebuild.
Great feedback. Second question I have is, I have a mortgage on my property. How does my contractor get paid?
If there's a mortgage on the property, if you have a contractor, the check will be payable to you and the mortgage company the check will be paid to you, yes, and the mortgage company. And then it would be sent back to your mortgage company. They would open up an escrow account, and the funds would sit there until the building begins. It's released in certain portions of the rebuild.
Great. Thank you, Shelley. And lastly, how do I get the most money from my insurance company after a wildfire?
The insurance company has their own team that's going to go out and estimate, do their due diligence, check your policy. At that time, you need to possibly build your own team. Even though you have a coverage limit, that doesn't mean they're just going to write that check and hand it over to you. You have to prove to them why you need every penny in that policy to rebuild your home. If you have a team on your side, that's what we would do. And we work real close with the insurance company. We just have to prove the point to them.
Great. So my moderator is saying we have a question that has come in.
Yeah. So the question is,
I got it. So I received, is this the first question? I received a settlement claims check from my insurance company. Should I cash it? Is that something, Alina, you might want to handle, or is that you, Shelley?
I think that would be Alina.
I wouldn't necessarily cash it right away. I would just make sure that depending on how they paid out, because sometimes your settlement check could indicate that it's, like, it depends on your coverage, on your structure coverage. And sometimes insurance companies will just pay you, let's say your dwelling A, they'll pay you your limit, but you don't know that they didn't, that they might have not even paid you on structure B, which is other structures, or even your code. And so it's really tricky to go ahead and cash that check, especially if it says like full and final settlement. So you also want to beware and speak with an expert, possibly somebody like, a public adjuster like Shelley Gregory.
Nice. So don't run out and immediately cash the check.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
probably wouldn't recommend that. Or, call your insurance adjuster and get clarity on exactly what this check is for.
So that's a great segue, Eileen. Let's move on to funds and payment. So the next question, I received my insurance claim checks, what do I do? And address this relative to the bullet points that we see on the slide, if you could.
Sure. So you will, like Shelley briefly described, how the contractor gets paid. So you will receive an insurance claims check from your insurance company. It will have, so there's two different ways. Some clients have a mortgage, some do not have a mortgage. So I'm going to cover what to do with the check if you do have a mortgage.
Okay.
So if you do have a mortgage, your insurance adjuster is going to make the check payable to yourself and your mortgage company. Now, you can't just walk into a branch and cash the check or, deposit it into a separate, bank account. You actually have to send it over to a claims department that handles all the laws draft checks. So some are located in Springfield, Ohio. They're all over the states, but you have to make sure that you mail it via FedEx overnight to your lien holder, which handles all the laws draft checks. So you would send it there, and what they do is, like Shelley briefly explained, that they open up what's called a restricted escrow account. They will deposit these funds in that account and pay your contractor as they complete phases of your project. If you don't have a mortgage company, then your insurance adjuster will make the check payable just to yourself. Now, what you can do, and what I strongly recommend, is you opening up a separate account at your local branch and deposit these structure funds in that account, only because you want to make sure that it's separate from your personal funds, and you can have a good record of when these payments do get out from that account. You have good record of how much you're paying your contractor as the work they complete in stages. So with how your contractor gets paid is really important. Whether you have a mortgage or you don't have a mortgage, your contractor gets paid per inspections that they do. So if you don't have a mortgage, it's pretty simple. Your project manager, which we'll introduce later, Bill, he'll give you a call and let you know, like I've completed, a certain phase in your project, and, a payment is triggered. We strongly recommend that you come out, you inspect the property, you make sure that your contractor, in fact, did complete that phase, and then pay your contractor for that specific phase for the work that has been completed. If you do have a mortgage company, then your mortgage company will send out a third party as an inspector. They'll come out, inspect the property, make sure that your contractor is in fact completed with a certain phase of work, and only then they will send out a portion of the initial claims check made payable to yourself and to your contractor. So therefore, throughout the entire rebuild, you are fully in control of the funds and how your contractor gets paid. So it's really important to make sure that you inspect the property and make sure that the contractor is in fact rebuilding at that time frame of when the next payment gets triggered. And with your insurance company, what they do like to do, which is very beneficial for you as a client, they will withhold what's called recoverable depreciation. So there are There are, it is a certain percentage of funds that they withhold from your initial claims check, and they do not pay those funds out until your contractor is absolutely 100% completed with the entire rebuild. So they do that to protect yourself, make sure that the contractor finishes the job at a 100% completion. So only then they will release these funds to your contractor, and that will fulfill your rebuild cost.
Very thorough. Thank you, Elena. So we're going to go on to the next section of contents recovery. Again, if you have any questions on the previous section of insurance and funds management, please submit it and we can address it at the end. But as we move on to the next one, contents recovery, the real goal of contents recovery is to collect the value of everything that was damaged or destroyed. Of course, that's within your policy limits. And the way to do that with the least painful way possible. But contents recovery, I'm going to ask Mike to step in and take the place of Alina. We've got two questions here that we typically receive for most of our restoration customers. And the first question, Mike, if you're ready, don't mean to put you on the spot. How do I get paid for my personal property?
First of all, from all of us at North American and Good Life Fire Restoration, we do want to say we're sorry for your loss, all of us here. In regards to the question, how do you get paid? Your insurance carrier is going to give you a certain percentage on the top. It's your responsibility at that point to prove to them the additional funds that you need to recover those personal belongings. So an inventory list is going to help, a memory jogger list is going to help, but every situation is going to be different depending on exactly what you had in your property, how it's itemized, and the value of those items.
So, thanks, Mike. The second question I have is, do I have to do an inventory of all my personal property?
No, you don't. You can get experts to help you, and if you do want to go ahead and put that memory jogger list together, it's tedious work. Absolutely, you can do it. But if it is stressful, there are experts. There are people like Shelley and other public adjusters that can help with that. There are also content specialists that mainly handle that. So you are going to have some very good advice on how to handle that. So any additional questions regarding that, we can certainly answer that one-on-one with you in person.
Great. We did have a question come in, and the following question is, do I own my own inventory?
Everything that was in your home is your personal property, period. If it was yours, you will get compensated for. Again, it boils down to inventorying exactly what you had without leaving anything unanswered for, because if you do, you're not going to get paid for it.
Well, this brings up a unique situation, Mike. What if I have my property and it's been damaged and my insurance company pays for it? Is it their inventory or yours?
It depends on the insurance carrier. Right now, unfortunately, a lot of things that were sentimental to you, if you could keep those items, and no insurance carrier is going to deny you from that under the circumstances.
Great. Again, I would encourage you, if you have any questions, certainly submit those and we can answer those at the end. But Michael, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm going to transition this to the third segment, which is the rebuilding process, and I'm going to ask if Bill Karp can step in, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. So, rebuilding process. So, this typically involves the most significant amount of time, and this is one of the things, if I could share with you, the single most important thing in the rebuilding process is do business with the right people. And how do you determine that? Check references. References may not be everything, but you can also check Google for this. You can go onto Google and type the name of your restoration contractor and simply ask ABC company problems, ABC company lawsuits. And I don't want to disparage anything, but really do your due diligence here, because you're going to be spending a significant amount of time with your contractor. Also check the CSLB page, Contractor State Licensing Board page. You can take a look at simple things. Are there any actions? Are there any situations with these? And last but not least, sometimes it's good. Meet the owner, meet the president of the company, see if their vision is the same as yours. And then you can get a general feel of whether or not you're doing business with the right contractor, because that's really critical. So moving along, when it comes to the rebuilding process, there's a quick overview here. And Bill, can you share with the team the milestones associated with the building process, the significant ones?
Yeah. So we have here kind of showing you the process, the full process overall, what it takes place and where. We start typically fires and losses. They start with estimating all the damages. And typically insurance company comes out to do so, or with COVID, a lot of the insurance company, they might ask contractor to write a proposal or scope of work or estimate. So that's a kind of your starting point. Once you have a number, undisputed scope of work from insurance company, approved one, then the next stage is the contract, the approved contract, so we move forward into that. Once we get the contract signed based on the number that insurance company pays out, then the full process steps into drafting and design. That's the next stage, and you know, in California, we're required to pull permits, and certain jobs require engineering, some not, depends how severe damages are. So that's the next stage. That's where moves from contract to drafting and design. And then we receive a permit with building department. Once we receive a permit, then we go through selection meeting on items such as paint colors, flooring, cabinetry, everything that was damaged and getting restored or rebuilt. You're the one who's making all the selections. It's really up to you and the material you're picking out. That's really up to you what you want to have in your place. And insurance companies, they owe you like for like what you used to have as far as finishes, but whatever you decide to put back, that's absolutely up to you. And we have great showroom to provide you great samples and variety of samples. So we go through selection meeting, and then we have the construction portion, and then we put as a final build construction. So construction, and then after that is a final inspection, and the job is complete.
Oh, well, thank you. A couple of questions that we typically get in the reconstruction process, Bill. The biggest one we always get is, how long does the rebuild process take? Can you shed any light for our webinar people here as what that answer is?
That's always number one question. You know, people who's going through their losses, that they're losing their home, their comfort zone. That's one of the first questions they all ask. How long does it take? I really want my house back. I want my place back. Especially if you have pets, people really suffer that separation from their own place, their own home. So how long does it take? Well, it really depends on the building department. With COVID, things are moving a bit slower as far as the submittal and approval and the timelines. So it depends on your building department, depends which county, city you're in. It typically, for the permit, it can take anywhere between 4 and 12 weeks, depending. And the rebuild process, same thing. It depends job by job. On average project, it's 6 to 9 months. But again, it really, some of the smaller losses, kitchen fires, if it's a full rebuild, it can take up to a year. It really depends. So we can sit down and answer that one-on-one.
So each situation is relatively unique, with the building permit process taking typically longer than necessary in the COVID times.
Right.
All right. Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I make, a question that we always get is, can I make structural changes to my home?
Right, that's probably the second question, because it's unfortunate, but you're in those shoes where you just lost your whole home and all the structural changes you wanted to add, maybe potential additional square footage, or a bedroom, or a sunroom, or a patio cover, or a deck. Can you make structural changes? The answer is yes, and I'll be more than happy to talk one-on-one, but the answer is always yes.
Oh, good. Thank you, Bill. And again, if there's any questions, please feel free to submit those. We don't have any final questions at this point, and if you do, please feel free to submit those, and my moderator will see it. If there's anyone here who wants to go in greater depth about your individual or unique situation, give us a call. We've got people that can answer right now. It's 916-970-3535. Or you can submit your phone number in the Q&A portion, and we have some people, even if it's some simple questions, we could just give you a call. So feel free to do that. what are the next steps? If you would like us to, we can have a no obligation consultation where we visit you personally, or we can do it over Zoom. In which case, if that was the case, call us at 916-970-3535. If you want to just schedule a consultation, we're typically available Monday through Sunday, 9, 11, 1, and 3. You could go to the URL, I'll repeat it, it's goodlifeconstruction.com/webinar-1-on-1/, it's a mouthful. And then also too, if you wanted to watch this webinar with the presentation format, the URL's there as well. I'll spare you the details of going through that one. So that is it. Unless any questions come over, we are available. And last but not least, I really appreciate you coming. Thank you very much.